I remember, I remember my daughter, they always had to do a project at the Catholic school, and she's one of these that, oh Dad, I can't, I don't know what to do. And I says, why don't we do a story on downtown Princeton? I said, she was probably 7th grade, 6th grade, whatever. So she's going, okay. So I get her in the car, and we started out by the library, the old where the old library was. You know? And we started going, and I started telling her about just that block. Then we moved down to the next block and told her about the next block, everything. That was the shoemaker, and that was the barber shop, and before you knew it, she was really interested in it. That was good. We had fun. And she goes, and I was only how old then, and I knew a lot of the history on some of that stuff, you know. And now I see a couple of papers and stuff, that starts bringing memories back to me, you know. And you know, and even shopping, like Friday nights downtown here, you couldn't find a parking spot. If people were shopping and the bars were going crazy. I remember at the store too, when Cattle Fair was going on the first Wednesday of the month. Like my grandma, they got their checks on the 3rd, and my grandma would have to be down to the bank on the 3rd before noon because she paid all her bills. We have to pay them all up, you know, and I don't think it's that way now, but I mean, she was, you know, that was always, and I could look on my sales chart for the month, and I could pick you out what days I could pick you out what day was Wednesday, which Wednesday was Cattle Fair. That's how much busier it was. And you know, people would come in. It was just a tradition. And then I think a lot of them would eat, and a lot of them, well, they had it up there for at Western House for a reason. So they could wet their whistle a little bit after, you know, and then you see pictures of it back in the olden days when they brought their horses and they had all the pictures are just, they're out, like at McCann has some of those pictures up there, you know.
Yeah. We're going to have a few of those in the photo exhibit.
The more I see of it, the more I think I kind of want to live, well now after what we're going through now, I mean, the more I want to live, it seemed calmer and just, and I'm sure there's a lot of issues, but you know.
Horse poop.
Yeah. So, yes, Dick.
I was a teenager when I came to town, right next to the print shop in the bowling alley.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about your dad's sense of humor?
Yeah. Well, he didn't have much of a sense of humor for us guys too much.
I think he,
yeah, he did.
I really can't remember real details, but that's the image I have of him as a sense of humor.
Yeah, he did. Well, those guys they would go down by Keen's down there, and I would listen to them, and it was just like, they were hilarious, you know.
I think he kind of played me a little bit as a teenager. You
know? Yeah. He'd have a dry sense of humor. He wouldn't be laughing. And, sense of humor. He was just the kind of the sense of humor he'd have out of nowhere. It would come out of nowhere.
Boy.
With us guys, we had three boys and 2 girls, and like I said, we were all within like 7.5 years, and he was a man of few words for us, and I double-crossed him maybe twice in my lifetime, and I never did it again. When he said, you know, and he always said, you guys, you can walk here, you don't need a ride all the time and stuff, but then all of a sudden he'd say, hey Paul, I'll take you to school, and I'm going like, and we lived, you know, down by Little Mark, down by the Jillian Slugs, down that way. That mile in the car, I'm just sitting there going, oh boy, I would just be sweating because I must have did something wrong, or I'm going to get it, you know. But you know, he used that kind of treatment, and then that was punishment enough. Just when I got out of the car, it was, I almost said, I just had to go, oh, okay, here we go. You know, that's kind of the way it was. He was in Keen's one time, and he was just sitting there, and he always, that's when he could smoke, obviously, and he's smoking his pipe, had his hat on, and a couple of girls came up and said, hey, you want to shoot us in a game of pool? And he goes, you don't want to shoot me in a game of pool. He says, I was born on a pool table, he says. And these girls just, what are you gonna say, you know? And I know, working with him, I'm sure, I just knew, you know, Lee Williams, who passed away, his dad, and him, Cheesy, they were friends. Them two would sit at the table, they would be laughing and well, kind of just like we did in our, you know, you get your card game together and you're talking about some of the stuff for how many times, you know. I mean, that's kind of the, you know, like I said, he's smoking his pipe and he'd just be like, you know, my grandpa was exactly the same way. My grandpa would sit and, you know, the Catholics, you know, I have two uncles that were priests. A lot of you knew Padre, and I had another uncle who passed away way too early. He was just the opposite. He was very quiet. And a couple of you probably remember Uncle Bob, my Uncle Bob. And you get them together. I mean, and they go into their Packer game every year. They went to their ball games every year. They bowled and all that, you know. But yeah, so you know, Sunday afternoon at the Schlaefers when we were kids, that's when everybody went over. And they're all in the room, in the big living room, and they're all, you know what they're talking about on a Sunday. You know, they're talking about religion, and they're talking about, you know, this and that and whatever, you know. And they said my grandpa couldn't hear. They said my grandpa just said, he had his hearing speaker there and all that stuff. He could hear all that. But you know what, he's probably sitting there going, attaboy, attaboy. Just like the one time I never missed a day of work because of overindulging at night. I've never missed a day of work, but I was living at home and I was coming and eating. My dad was just got done eating breakfast and I was going out the door and just had to walk to the store and all of a sudden I picked the garbage can cover up and I had a letter rep there, you know. And I'm just sitting there going, oh boy, you know. And I walked to work and never heard anything, but I bet you he was sitting there. I bet you he was just snickering. So that's the way he was. He was very quiet. He'd watch his shows. I mean, well, Packer game. We're big sports. When I retired, I bet you last year, even when I was laid up, I watched 250 baseball games. You know, and you know, I said, you know, cable costs money and all that stuff. But you know what? I said, now you go to a game, it costs so much to go, but you can get cable probably for the whole year what you pay for going to 2 ball games if you let her run, you know. But Sundays was my dad would give my mom a break. He'd always make breakfast. Of course, we'd sit there and go, all right, Dad's making breakfast, something different, you know. And then it was polkas, and then it was the Packer game. And that's when the Packers always played at 1 o'clock. It's nothing like it is now. And that's the only game that's the only game we got most of the time all week until later on. Then the other conference started, you know. And if the Packer game, if they played a late game at night or something like that, we were mad because midnight or halftime we had to go to bed, you know. And he taught us how to. He'd run his strip cards though. We'd all get numbers, and we'd each have to chip in a penny or a nickel, and then you know the winning number would get. So we'd be rooting for our number. So see, he taught us that. He'd let us have a little sip of Pabst Blue Ribbon maybe once in a while, you know, just to, you know. But it was fun
when they scored.
Yeah. But
If
yeah.
I could elaborate a little bit on your dad, back in the early '60s, I used to tend bar at Don's, which is now Renard's Bakery.
Yep.
And he frequented that quite a bit. So I experienced some of his dry humor.
Yeah.
But the week before Cattle Fair, he when he worked at the printers,
Yeah.
made the rounds to all the merchants.
Yeah.
Got their Cattle Fair specials coming up for that week. I distinctly remember that.
Yep, he did that all the time. But sometimes my mom, he happened to be, he was working some late hours, but other times he wasn't really working late hours. He was you know, playing hard, and he'd work hard and then sometimes play hard. So I always remember my mom would say, Paul, take a ride down there and see if your dad's down there. He should be getting home for supper, you know. You go down, the door's locked, down at the printer. You look, it says, went to the post office. Be back in 15 minutes. Every time. Of course, we wouldn't tell Ma that, you know. Well, then I'd go and, well, you know what it is, you know, now you gotta go in and you go, well, if, you know, we walk in and said, Dad, you better get home. Well, he's gonna do whatever he wants, you know. But I guess we got the message across, yeah. But it was always went to the post office, be back in 15 minutes. But,
He loves
yeah.
to argue.
But, yeah, yeah.
If he could, and it was so funny, he'd argue with somebody, no matter what side the other guy was on, Duke would be on the other side. But by the time they got through talking, he had the guy switched around. And in the meantime, he'd say something and then he'd wink at some of us.
Yeah.
But he just loved to switch the guy completely around.
As I got older, he would argue with, you know, well, I was in business and now too, you know, and I would argue and he would never get mad. He would just lead you on where all of a sudden it would just be like, oh, okay, you know, you were gonna change his mind, you know. Of course, you know, then your husband, the bowling team, you know, Mark, Corky Doro,
Yeah.
and the Layshock boys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's when Gramps Wishkovic
Yep.
out there, and Pat Petruski, you know, that was the Forest.
They were quite a
you know.
team.
Yeah. And then if they needed, I remember when they went to must have been the state tournament, then they'd make Vic Leviter a Forester for that Sunday, because he was a good bowler. Yeah. So, and I learned how to. People don't know, even when I go down the bowling alley now, they don't know how to keep score. You know, they can't add it all up. I was keeping score when I was in kindergarten with them guys. And then if they bowled a late shift, I would stay there, and I know Ma didn't like it, but you know, and then you could walk home. But the late shift, I know even when I started bowling, the early shift would start at 7, the late shift would start about 9:45. So they would be done about 12:30, 1:45, and then they want to play a pot game and stuff. And then I'll tell you what, I had more candy bars and pop and whatever, chips and whatever, you know. But I learned how to keep score, and it was fun. It was fun, and then that's how you get interest, you know, when you're older, you know. That's how, like, you know, he didn't work on cards or anything. He didn't go hunting and stuff, even though in the newspaper he always said he got a deer. Johnny Lazinski got a deer. He never hunted in his life. You know, they put down all their, you know, just for friends. You know, the people that he knew were going to see it and get a kick out of it, that's what they do it for. You know, so as we got older, we caught on to some of that stuff, you know. But I mean, that's how you kept everybody in town, you know, kind of together and, you know. And then that's where, you know, you get back to the food booth. You know, I never really gave it much thought, and then all of a sudden I look, and the booth is named after him. Mike Scobie's got a plaque down there telling him what he did. And then I kind of finally went down there one day after I didn't look at it for a couple of years probably, and I go, I read it. So, because, you know, he kind of always said, you know, he did a lot of stuff for the town and stuff, but that's what you should be doing, you know. And that's what, you know, when you, like we just talked about helping people out, that's what we should be doing. It shouldn't be that much harder. I mean, you know, it's easier. I always said it's easier if you open a door for somebody, it's easier to do that than to try to get out of it. It's harder to try to get out of it. It's going to take you twice the time. So why don't you just do it, you know? And at the store even, I would get calls I got a call one time at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, Paul, there's something wrong with our turkey. I'm going like, well, what's wrong with it? Well, it looks like it's moldy or whatever. Well, I'm going like, and it's the night before Thanksgiving. So I'm sitting there going, okay. I went over to the house and I looked at it. Well, it was a bruise, you know. It's a bruise from the turkey, you know. But they didn't think that was, so went to the store, got him another turkey. And I said, do whatever you want with that one. I mean, and you know, I mean, now what did that even cost, you know? Bernie from out by, when he hit the supper club, Paul, we're running out of chicken, you know? So, how much you need, Bernie? Meet me at the store in whatever time. I learned that from my dad, because my dad did the same thing. One time on Memorial Day, I was up there with my wife and my daughter, Wendy, when Wendy was probably 5 or, she's maybe about, yeah, she's maybe 6 or 7, whatever. It's Memorial Day weekend and we're locked up, and a family came into the parking lot and they said, hey, you guys open? No? Well, we got a couple guys that are hungry at home and stuff, we want to cook out, and everybody's closed. We're down by Montello, Montello's closed, and I said, well, what do you guys need? They said, well, can you get us whatever? So I think we started out with a couple steaks and potatoes. And then they said, do you have some veggies? And of course, we just kept going back and forth. Of course, then my daughter says, do you girls need anything else? You know, so then we, $80-some worth of groceries we got by the time we were done. I didn't let them in the store. You know, when we were closed, I didn't let people in the store, but I would go and get stuff for them. But I mean, and then we had, you turn it into fun. I mean, you know, that's just kind of the way, and I learned that's, you talk about, you know, my dad's kind of sense of humor and stuff that he did. I mean, there was no clock for him. He just, you know, whatever, and you know, that whatever had to be done, that's the way it was. And he didn't make a lot of money either, but hey, we made it through. Never got cold, never went hungry, everything was fine. So, anybody else got anything?
Done a good job.
He played a lot of ball too, didn't he?
He played a lot of ball. He pitched. No, my uncle Padre, he pitched and my dad caught.
Yeah,
My uncle would come in on the train. He was in the seminary, and then he would come in on Sundays with that.
Yeah.
The Sunday afternoon hardball league was, you know,
So,
and then my dad he broke his back. I can remember how I probably was 3 or 4. I can still remember him laying in the living room on a cot. And after that, he couldn't play ball. That's how he turned into an umpire. And then he would umpire. He umpired softball. He umpired high school. He umpired the big city league. And I would go along with him. You know, I could never understand why on Sundays, if the game started at 2 o'clock, why would you come home at 8? Or 9, until then I went along, and then I found out what went on. Oh, I remember one time in Red Grand, it was a close game, and I would sit, because I like watching ball and stuff. It was a close game. Guy had 2 strikes on him, and pitch went down, and he called it strike 3. And I remember the players, they went crazy. They thought, no way, because he didn't swing at it. And I'm sitting there going, you know, that's kind of hard to take. You know, your dad's getting, you know, you learn, but you learn that too. So he came up and we were walking out and he said, because I thought it was a ball myself, you know.
Oh.
And he came up and he says, Paul, did you think that was a strike? I go, yeah. I thought it was. And then after the game, you know how it goes. Everybody's talking, and that's when they had the old bottle openers, and they had the Paps flying. And
last guy that made it out had to buy a case of beer.
Yeah. But yeah, my dad and I guess that one day there was a story about them before the game. Him and Padre took Johnson around the bases, and I don't know if they maybe hit Jimmy's snack bar over there in Montello before that or something, you know, they were, you know, there was some shenanigans going on with those guys, you know. But yeah, all fun, all memories, you know, and, you know, he's been gone 30, he died at 59, 86, he died in 86, 37 years, yeah, just this last week, yeah. And my mom's still going, and she's in Maple Crest in Ripon, and she's got tough walking, but she's going to be 93 next month. So the other day, I know she's feeling good when she's watching me watering the plants and doing this, and I'm not doing it right, so. So I knew that, when I left her, I go, she's doing fine. Then she has her days, you know, when you get that age, I mean, that's kind, we all, you know, that's just the way it goes, and I listen for the first 15 minutes, then we talk about stuff and everything, so, you know. And now, Mary Jesky went over there now, so, she's right across the hall.
Oh,
So my mom called last week. My mom hardly ever calls me unless it's something not too good, you know. And I'm looking, and I just got home from delivering mails, and I'm going like, oh boy. She says, you never guess who moved in over here. Well, I knew, you know. And so she had to tell me. She was so excited, you know. Dolores Novak's there too. So they're all down in the same spot. Dolores is quite a Dolores, I like her. So,
Well, I would say that your dad definitely left a legacy in this town. And the biggest legacy he left for this town is people. And I really appreciate you coming here,
I knew it happened.
sharing your stories with
Yeah.
the Historical Society, all the stuff you did. I think my kids thought your name was Sherm when we were little. They were always there.
There were so many of them. My boss was an absentee owner. He was, when I started, after I was there for so long, I bet you the last 10 years, he was probably in that store 50 hours a year. And,
He was playing golf.
yeah, yeah. But he let me run the show, and, you know, how many people work for the same guy 45 years, you know? And there was a lot of stuff going on, but, you know, good, and there were some, you know, we all have our tough moments, or some, you know, shaky, or whatever you want to say, but that's all part of business, you know? I mean, I always said, you know, you make a mistake, and you, in the long run, you end up making money, because you'll never make that mistake again, and you'll tell the other people, don't do it this way, because this is what happened to me, you
That's a
know?
good perspective.
You know, and you know, in the grocery store, that bottom line is pretty thin, you know? So, yeah, so we'll just keep going.
All right. Well, should we thank Paul?
All right. Thank you. I was looking, when Sue Gore told me about this, I go, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. But I wish the mayor would be here. Where's the mayor?
Go call him. He misses your
What?
meetings.
Where is he tonight?
Go.
You tell
Go
him.
on by.
I pointed it out.
He's sitting on the back porch.
He's not, well, no meetings tonight or nothing, huh?
He misses your guys' meeting.
I know, but Dennis has to go down now to